So I was out of town last week, and I was at a workshop with this leadership community that I'm a part of, and I got to worship with some people. The people that lead this community have a Seventh Day Adventist background, so I went early because I wanted to worship with these folks. So so we worshiped on Saturday. Um, and my plan was we're going to worship, get a word from a great preacher, um, my man Et, great word, get some worship word, and then get out of there and get to Eastern Michigan's football game, at least for the second half, so I could go back and follow up with some of the guys and coaches that I met the prior week, right, that I told you guys all about. And so went a little longer than I expected. And then I was like, all right, sweet. I can still get there. I can still get there. It's halftime. I'll still be able to get to a good portion of the game. And then so service was over. The online portion of the service was over, and they put up a screen that said, "Thank you for joining us." I was like, sweet. And so I started to do the old gather my things, and then a woman came up with a microphone and said, "Now we're going to go into the testimony portion of our service." I was like, oh, testimonies? We're giving somebody else the mic? Oh, settled back in. And I didn't feel led, I'm free, dude. I could have gone, but I was there for the experience and the worshipful moment. Like I wanted to embrace the full opportunity. Yeah, so we were up in there. We were pushing 3 hours. I got the last 10 minutes of the game. And I don't mean like 10 football minutes. I mean like not like the last 10 minutes, like last 6-ish minutes. But got testimonies, and it was great. I shared me. I found, we get to talk now? Okay, I'm going to talk. So I shared testimony, and it was just cool. And so I just wanted to share that, really celebrating the opportunity to worship with some people that don't share all the same doctrine and theology that I do. And we drew close to Jesus and lifted him up, lifted him high, and it was great. My biggest takeaway from the weekend was the importance of starting with story. Start with story. So we did an exercise where we share kind of our personal mission statement, personal mission. So we all got in the hot seat as leaders, and we shared the mission, and then they push back on us and challenge our thoughts, because they want to make sure that these things are curated in our hearts, and that we share it with confidence. And so I said that my mission is that I encourage people to grow great character, namely the character of Christ. But I encourage people to grow great character so that they crush it in their calling. And people are like, all right, okay. And I was like, yeah, felt pretty good about it, But still, the pushback, and they simply asked the question, why? Like, that's cool. That sounds good. Why? And it's pretty common in the personal development space and just in the narrative of the world today in social media. The "what's your why" language it's pretty common, but it's really a great question. Why are we doing this? Why are we here? Why do you do what you do? Why do you live the way you live? Like, asking why is a really great question. Causes us to dig a little deeper. Challenges us, right? And so then I shared a story about my father, and about losing him at 19, and how my relationship with my father and the impact he made, and that I watched him make on community and on the world, and the way he influenced others, how that has led me to now not want to watch other people, because I lost him at 19. So I told the story much better the other day, but you guys know the story, so I'm just trying to If you don't, does everybody know kind of my story and testimony? Show of hands if you do not. If you do not. Oh, sweet. We need to have like a new members, but just like, oh man, we're gonna do that. All right, you guys hold me accountable. We're gonna do a testimony time, and everyone else is like, yeah, we're good. But it's important that you guys know me, right? See, start with story. And so I shared this story about when my father passed when I was 19 and the impact that made on me. And that's what drives me to be who I am and do what I do now. Obviously, all centered around Christ, right? But I shared that. And for the rest of the weekend, every person I talked to was like, hey, man, that really resonated with me. Hey, what you shared, man. Hey. And I was like, wow, the statement was cool. The what I do is cool, but it's the why behind it that created the connection that drew people in to say, man, I trust you. I can get down with you. I'm open to your influence. And so my takeaway was, man, start with story. And so I think about, like, we're getting ready, we're finishing Acts, and we're gonna go through the rest of the New Testament, and it's written by a whole bunch of it's written by Paul, whole bunch of it's written by a little bit of it's written by Peter, right, and some of the other apostles. And it's so important, rather than just read these instructions of what they're telling us to do and how they're telling us to behave, and the knowledge that they offer, it brings it to life so much more when we understand the why behind it and the story behind it. Yes, their purpose is Jesus. It's the spreading of the gospel. Like, yes, it's the firm foundation that they're standing on. But each of these people have their own. Remember, like a few weeks ago, we talked about John? Didn't that just bring the character of John to life? And you're like, wow, I really respect and appreciate the closeness he had, the intimacy he had with Jesus. Now we think about that differently, right? So I was thinking about, like, we mentioned a couple weeks ago that Peter and Paul are two of the main players and leaders in the early church. And I was thinking about the ministry they did and how might they respond if somebody asked them, hey, why do you do what you do? Why are you writing these letters? Why are you traveling all around? Why are you taking this on this opposition? And any guesses? Like, what might you say was Peter's why? What might you say is his personal mission statement? Any takers? That's good. I show love for Christ. Peter's mission may have been to show love for Christ because he was challenged. That's good. I like that you picked up on, like, it was rocky. His relationship with Christ was rocky, but then he goes on to show great love for Christ. Anybody else want to contribute to that, Peter? Cliff? Protect the flock. Good. Charles? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. 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 Charles, just for the field, could you define ratchet? I'm just playing. I'm just playing. He was saying, Jesus knew how ratchet, messed up, trifling Peter was, and he still invited him in, and still used him as a catalyst. Man, like, whew, yeah. So what I said for Peter is, I said, well, if you were to ask Peter, hey, what's your why, Peter? I said he might say something like this: I denied Christ, but he never denied me. Whew. Isn't that great? Man, it's a good why. It's a good why. And everything you guys are saying and thinking. How about Paul? What do you think Paul's why is? Any takers on Paul? Paul was humbled. He wanted to keep other people from making the same mistake. Okay, that's cool. Any other takers on Paul? He was killing Christians. Like we talk about, there's no greater witness than a transformed life. Bro went from killing Christians. When the first martyr he was a boy watching the elders of his community slay the first martyr, Stephen. And where do you think Hold My Jacket comes from? Because I don't want to get this. They didn't have a whole lot of clothes. About to get real bloody. It's about to get messy up in here. And Paul was holding, that was what was modeled for him, holding the cloaks. And he said, oh, I see the standard that's been set for me. Nobody's shutting this down. Nobody's overtaking our religion. We're going to shut this thing down. And so he set out to imprison and kill Christians. And then God shows up. Jesus shows up and said, why are you persecuting me? So what I said for Paul was, hey, Paul, what's your why? I persecuted Christ, but his grace covered me. So I have given my life. I have given myself to a life of persecution so that others might receive the same grace that I have. Remember a couple weeks ago we talked about Peter being thrown in prison. And I found myself thinking, well, why was that? Why was he thrown in prison? We're going to look at that story in a minute. Then I think about Paul later on. Paul goes on mission trip after mission trip, takes beatings. These stories were written by Luke, who was his physician, right? We talked about that a few weeks ago. And he takes all these beatings, left for dead, willingly embraces greater persecution and more imprisonment for the sake of the gospel, so that it can spread. Appeals to Rome so that he can spread the gospel. Literally, like, is called to imprisonment for the sake of Jesus. Faces shipwreck, but faces a hurricane, is shipwrecked, left on an island, and embraces all of it with the perseverance because he trusts in God's mission that he was given. Paul's pretty dope, man. Paul's pretty powerful. Paul also was very aware of who he was, like Raul said. Paul also was very humbled. Yeah. So Peter, early on in Acts, I know I'm jumping all around. Go to Acts 3, Acts chapter 3. Peter and John. I don't want to leave John out. Peter and John were thrown in jail for a random act of kindness done in Jesus' name. And then when they shared how they did this and they shared about the goodness of Jesus, they were thrown in jail. We're going to read the first 10 verses, and we don't have much time. I wasn't planning on unpacking all of this story. There's a couple things that I want us to get out of this that I think is super relevant, and then I think also sets us up for a great attitude and mindset for next Saturday as we serve community at the Fall Festival. Chapter 3, verse 1 through 10. Now Peter and John were going up to the temple at the 9th hour. That's like afternoon, the hour of prayer. And a man who had been lame from his mother's womb, paralyzed his whole life, was being carried along, whom they used to set down every day at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, in order to beg alms of those who were entering the temple. When he saw Peter and John about to go into the temple, he began asking to receive alms. But Peter, along with John, fixed his gaze on him and said, "Look at us." And he began to give them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, "I do not possess silver or gold. But what I do have, I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ, the Nazarene, walk." And seizing him by the right hand, he raised him up, and immediately his feet and his ankles were strengthened. With a leap he stood upright and began to walk, and he entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God, and they were taking note of him as being the one who used to sit at the beautiful gate of the temple to beg alms. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what had happened to him. A couple things. It's just better to give than to receive. Peter and John gave what they had. Hey, next Saturday, do me a favor. Give them Jesus. As a community, can we just give people Jesus? And if you don't have much, you better get some before then, please. Please come with a spirit-filled heart, right? Give them Jesus. Okay? The next thing I want to point out is they were filled with wonder and amazement at what happened to him. But they knew what happened. Because they're like, yo, this is the same dude. What? How did he? Remember I said the greatest witness is a transformed life. My guess is that the joy in this man and the praise and the dancing and this man who had been lame since he was in the womb came out. My guess is the joy didn't end in the temple that day. Have you ever seen somebody with such a joy and say, man, what happened to you? Have you ever has anyone ever asked you, are you living a transformed life? What happened to you? On the flip side, have you ever seen somebody who is just really ratchet, right? Or really angry and bitter and ask yourself, man, what happened to you? Right? Can you imagine this dude's story? What about next year at the festival? What about the Tuesday after the festival? What about, he can travel now? What happens when he goes to visit another town and say, hey man, there's something about you, you're just really filled with joy. What happened to you? What's your story? Can you imagine dude's story? Bro, I spent this amount of time every single day, not able to walk since birth. And then these guys showed up and shared, he's got no choice but to share his story, right? And so, my challenge for us as we give people Jesus every single day, but we got a special moment next week. As we give people Jesus, my challenge for us is to not treat people like projects. Let's not speak to them as if there's a transaction to be made, as if we are trying to get something from, get them here on Sunday, right? If you feel led to invite somebody to church, invite them to church. It's fine, but that's not our MO, right? My challenge to you guys is start with story. Just start with story. Sure, and don't talk their heads off. They're here with their families or whatever. Like, let's be wise. Let's have emotional intelligence. Don't talk their heads off for 20 minutes while they're trying to, like, their kids pulling on their arm to go get candy. You're like, but seek for opportunities to see people, recognize them, and value them. Share your story in such a way that they feel safe with you and draw you in. Don't just tell them about your mission. Tell them about your why. Give them a glimpse into who you are. And then seek to find ways to find out who they are. And one of the ways that starts is ask them their name. Ask them their name, guys. Hi, what's your name? I met somebody named Yosemite this morning. Yosemite. I'm like, what? What's the story behind that? And she gave me the story. Right? A glimpse into, I see you, I recognize you, you have value, you're unique, and I would love to know you and value you. Give me a little bit of the story. Okay? And be willing to offer a little bit of your story. Where did I lose my phone? I'm gonna finish up. Couple more how-tos. Yeah, what's your name? What's your story? Ooh, another good question I like to ask people to take it another step deeper and to explore. Because let's stay away from what do you do? Let's say that's not that what we do is not our identity. Who we are is. Okay? I don't believe that what do you do should come until there's really no other thing to ask. All right? Okay? Because it's not, what you do is not always an invitation into who you are. Because then, you're a teacher, I put the label on there. I don't tell people I'm a pastor, typically. Very rarely will I lead with, well, I'm a pastor. Well, what do? I work at a church. That's usually my go-to, right? Because I don't want to have to, I'll do it, but I don't have to unwire whatever your presuppositions are to church leadership. I want you to know who I am. And my identity is in much more than what I do. Okay? What's your name? What's your story? I love to ask people, what's the dream? Man, what do you dream about? Where are you going? What's the dream? Because we've met people, we're meeting people in a certain phase in their journey, but they're going somewhere, man. And if we can be a blessing in the process, man, not everybody wants to talk about where they came from, but we want to give them hope in where they're going. And we want to value that. So what's your dream? That's one I asked young and old. Here's another good couple questions that you can ask. I learned this from a guy in my leadership coaching community. My boy Jay says, he'll ask the question, hey, what's the most exciting thing going on in your life right now? That's cool, right? And then he'll also ask, and what's the most challenging thing going on in your life right now? We might not get that deep with people next Saturday. We might just get, hey, what's your name? But can we make sure that I love that Peter said, hey, look at me. Like this guy's alms for the poor. Hey, look at me. I see you. Make eye contact with you. I want you to see the joy in my eyes and the grace in my eyes. I want you to see my countenance lift up when I meet this new person that walks on our campus. We want them to have a great experience. I see you. I'm glad you're here. We're so honored that you're here. Let them see your countenance raise. Okay? And let us give and bless them with the opportunity that we have. Sound good? Start with story, man. Give them Jesus. Okay? Lord, thank you for that conversation. Thank you for the unhurried prayer time. Thank you for the patience